Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Disha Rastogi, a digital analytics consultant, and today we are going to walk through an implementation of Adobe Target Server Side. Now, if you want to understand what is server-side testing and when should you use it, how it differs from client-side testing, go check out my previous video on the same topic. The link is provided in the description. Do like this video and subscribe to my channel. So let's get started. Before we get deeper into this, we need to understand in order to drive server-side testing, you will need some sort of marketing and technical expertise both. It generally happens that you have a developer who understands Node.js and one marketing expert, and they get lost when it comes to server side. This video will help both the worlds, the marketing and the development, to get an idea of what is happening here in server-side testing and henceforth steer relevant use cases for your organization. This is the Adobe documentation page for server-side SDKs, and here you will see that server-side SDK and delivery API are two ways you can implement Target server-side, but SDKs are often easier to use. Delivery API is essentially something that you will be using in the background for SDK, but it's essentially the same thing. We will be looking at the implementation through Node.js SDK. Okay. Two things that I want to call out is that Adobe has added two new functionalities to server-side SDK. One is feature flagging and on-device decisioning is the sixth. Feature flagging is basically when you want to test new features or functionality by way of enabling or disabling a feature at runtime and creating server-side test around them. It's basically a software management technique. Okay. And on-device decisioning provides you caching ability for A by B and XT activities on your server, and it helps when you want to prioritize performance. So this is all about the SDK that we want to discuss. So this is the GitHub site where we are looking at the different samples that Adobe has mentioned. So you have a lot of demos here. You have like feature flag, which is the new thing here. And you have demo for React as well. You have target only implementation. You have on device decisioning as well here, right? So there are a lot of samples here. We'll pick up one comprehensive use case. Okay, let's pick up the hybrid one. Okay, this one, which is the advanced version. The next we need to understand is the setup, how you have to have the entire setup here. So you have the public folder here. Public folder has all these files. We'll also be implementing the same in our own setup when we apply this sample to our real life use case. Okay. Then you have the templates. Template is the basic sample page code that they will be using in their implementation, but we will not be using this one, right? So let's move back. This is basic instruction thing that they have given where they're discussing the code and all. This is a file that gets created automatically, so we don't have to worry about this. We may have to change the folder name here, right? The rest of it gets created automatically. If the folder name is not the right one here, you have to make it the right folder name where you have all the relevant files. So basically what you will be doing is in your own setup, you will be creating one folder which has all the relevant Node.js files as well as the relevant server-side set of files that you will be requiring, like we discussed, the public folder and then the main code and everything. Then you have Package.json. So again here it's the same folder name that you need to take care of, whatever folder name which has all the relevant files. Make sure that this folder name is mentioned here. Then you have server.js. So moving on, this is the server.js, which has the entire code that you require for server-side implementation. We'll be discussing this in a bit. And then we have mentioned this name here as well, right? So when you write npm run start, then this code will get initiated and it will do the necessary things. And then you have these dependencies. Now these dependencies, whatever you define in server.js, these dependencies will be mentioned here. Okay, so this is about package.json. Then is server.json. We will be modifying this code a bit for our use case, but we'll just briefly touch upon what this code is doing. There will be some modifications to it, and we will discuss it later on. So these are the dependencies. Then the config, where you are talking about client and organization ID. Here you are initializing the target client. So whatever template we talked about earlier, this template variable is referring to that, right? It's picking up that template from there. Here we are calling express, then this is the cookie pass of our cookies. Here we are referencing the public folder we just discussed, the public folder which has all visitor api.js, et.js, app measurement.js. Then here we are talking about the cookies, right? uh, this is the HTML function. This is the most important function. So this server state object is for hybrid integration. They're basically creating these variables. So if you see the template, these variables are there in that template, and they are replacing these variables with these particular values, right? So they are fetching the organization ID from config, and then this is being fetched from the target response, content and visitor state, right? And server state is being fetched from the server state object. So this is all about this. Then this is the send success response, where we are setting these headers, and then we are calling these functions save cookie for creating these cookies, target cookie and target location hint cookie, and then we are calling the send HTML function. And this is for the errors, right? Then this is where the main thing happens. So when we go to this page, which is the default page, these cookies first of all get created, then the request object is being created. Here we are defining the mboxes, and then we are creating the response here by fetching offers from target, and then this is the error. So if there are any errors, this particular function gets called, and this is starting the server on the local machine. So as you can see, this is the Adobe documentation page for Target, and this is the administer Target page wherein we are looking at the implementation part. So if you go to administer Target in Target and go to implementation, you will find the client code and the organization ID here. So this is where you need to put in these values in your main code, which is server.js. We discussed this a few minutes earlier, right? So this is where you get these values. So now we are going to implement the GitHub use case to our real life sample, and the first thing we need to do is create the appropriate folder. So we have this target server side folder here, which has the different folders. So I have put in all the relevant files in this folder called target server side, and then I have a folder called views, in which I have all the relevant page files. I have two pages here, index.html and suv.html. I have converted the HTML pages into pug format. Now pug is a template engine that we are using. It helps to simplify the code. It has different features like conditions, loops, variables, which is not there in HTML. So that is why I have used pug, and pug will definitely compile into HTML in the backend. So that's about pug. So as you can see, we have one index.pug, and then there is index2.pug. Index.pug is the default page, and index2.pug is wherein I have made the changes. So one is wherein I am calling visitor API.js, okay, and then there is this visitor object that I'm creating, okay, and so why visitor API.js is being called here is because visitor API.js will help in creating a visitor object, okay. When you have server-side implementation, you need the visitor object right on very early in the order of firing. But tag manager code that you have, which probably would have your visitor API.js and all the relevant setup, will fire quite later in the, that process. So that is why we need to call visitor API.js and instantiate visitor object. Now, this particular code is for hybrid integration. So when you are implementing hybrid, so that you have the same visitor profile for the server side and the client side, you need to have this code. So in order to maintain that same profile, same visitor for client side and server side, the target uses location hint cookie. And for using that location hint cookie, you need this code here. Okay. And then server state is again used for hybrid implementation. It is a functionality that is only available in AD.js 2.2 plus onwards. Okay. So this is all about the visitor part. Then there is why we are using bug. So let's see that. This is the variable. Whatever response target returns, it will get replaced in this particular object. So this is all about the page setup. You have the right folder and then you have a folder called views in it, in which you have all the page related setup in that. So this is the index.js code, the main code. If we had looked at the GitHub code, it was there in server.js. I have renamed that to index.js, right? So the first thing that when you will launch the terminal is that you will do npm init, right, initialization, and then you will install these dependencies which are mentioned here: express, cookie parser, target client, and so on. Okay. Then the next thing you will do is, so these are the dependencies that we are defining here, and then we have defined the config. Now this is the client id code and the organization id code. We already discussed from where we have to pick up this. So whatever is your client id code and organization id code, you will mention it here. Then moving on, here we are creating a target client instance. Okay. Then where we are calling express, this is the code for cookies, right? Here we are setting the view engine to pug format because we are using the pug format files, right? Here we are referencing the public folder, okay? Whatever files that are there, we are using the public folder. So we have all the app measurement.js, visitor API.js inside it. We already discussed, this is the same implementation that the GitHub sample had, right? Where they had a public folder, they had all these files in there. That's there. Then so a lot of this code is exactly same as the GitHub code, but there are some changes, right? uh, then this one is for saving cookies, right? So this function is basically for creating target cookies, for assigning the experience and identifying the visitor. Then this is the main function that is modified the most, maximum changes in this one. First one, this is the server state object for hybrid integration of target. Here we are constructing this object by fetching the request and response. Then again, we are creating these three variables: organization ID. Organization ID is coming from here, right? Then you have visitor state and content, which we are again fetching from the target response. Then what we are doing is, once all this is done, we are rendering this index2.pug with all these variables. So as you saw that code there, that code will have these values. Then this is the send success response function. This is the same as the GitHub code. And then you have the send error response, again same. These two functions, send error response and get address, these are the same. Now this is the one that initiates the entire process. In the GitHub code, this was app, now this is router, because that is how we are doing everything. Here we are building the cookies: visitor cookie, target location hint cookie. Again, target location hint cookie is for the hybrid implementation, so that you have only one visitor for the server side and the client side calls. So that is this code. And then we have this m boxes. So here we define m boxes. We can have one m box or multiple m boxes. At least one m box is definitely required. Okay, this is my m box name. Okay, then we have, here is the response. Now here we are creating the response. We are fetching the offers from target, right, with all these values. And then we are calling this send success response function. If there is an error, so we have the try catch block, and if there is an error, we are rendering the default page. This is for the SUV page, and then we are applying the routes to our application, and then this is the code for starting the server on the local machine. So this is all about Index.js. I have uploaded this file in the drive and given the link in description. Okay, let's talk about Package.json. We already covered it earlier. Now we'll just see what changes we have made specific to our use case. So here we have the folder name Target Server Side, which is this, and then we have the main file name, which is index.js, which has the main code for us, and we have also mentioned it here. So as you can see, it says run by the npm start command. So when you write in the terminal npm run start, this file will run. Whatever code here it is, it will run, and you will have the response and everything from target, and you will see the changes on the page. So this is all about this. Then if you see down here, you have all the dependencies that you have mentioned right in the beginning of the index.js code. Okay, so this is all about package.json. Whatever keyword you mention here, always remember, if you mention here end, so you will have to write npm run end. So that is how it works. Just wanted to show the server-side activity that we have created for this implementation. So this is the experience B, and it has been allocated 100% traffic, and we are using an A by B activity. It is using the form-based composer. This is the mbox name, and this is the content, the HTML content that will get rendered on the local host. You will see the same in the content in response that you will receive on the terminal, right? So let's get moving to the terminal part. We have set the location to the appropriate folder where we have all the relevant files, right, in the terminal. Now we will do npm run start. We have already installed all the relevant dependencies. Now we will do this, and now index.js has been initiated. The server has started on the local machine. Now we will go to the browser and hit this site localhost 5001, and then we will see what changes are visible on the site. As you can see that now the local host has loaded, and we can see the content from our server side test, which is this: welcome to server side testing. As we saw in our earlier activity that we had created, this is the server side content that we had put in the activity, right? So server side test implementation has been successful. Now let's go ahead and look at the response that we got from target. Let's understand what is happening in the terminal once the local host is loading on the browser. So first of all, the request is sent server side. Okay. Then you have the request ID here and all other related variables, right? You have the SDID, supplemental data ID here. Okay. And then you have the execute mboxes, you have the URL, you have the mbox name and its position 0, right? So this is the response now that we are getting from target. Now its status is 200, request ID is also there, and then there are other variables. Now you have the execute, mboxes, index, name, options, type, content. Now you see this is the same content that we are seeing on the local host site also. Welcome to server side testing. So, and so if you see index.js, you have target response.response.execute.mboxes 0.option 0.content, right? The content variable is getting constructed from this order of sequence, and you can see the same sequence here. All this is inside response. So response execute, same here. Then there is mboxes, and this is the first mbox. Index 0 is there, so that indicates this. And then options, and then you have content, right? Same sequence. And then you have the other response tokens like activity name, geo state, all these are there. Whatever response tokens you have active in your implementation, all these will be reflected here. So this is all about what is happening on the terminal. And if you look at index2.pug, this very content is getting replaced, right? If you see this particular thing here, we have same welcome to server side testing getting replaced in this particular area. So this is what is happening. Okay. So let's summarize what we learned today. The first thing we learned was that first we need to decide what type of integration it is. Server side only, a hybrid implementation, and then you also need to understand intricacies like whether you want to go for on-device decisioning or not, right? So that's the first step. Then there is the second step where you set up your application for the server side changes. Whatever response you will get from target, whatever functionality you want to test, you need to discuss with your developer how you are going to make changes in the application for same. And you also need to think about whether you need to include visitor API.js or any other Adobe related files like app measurement.js and all, right, in your application code. And then the third step. Now the third step is the code which we talked about, Index.js. Now that initiates everything. That is the one which eventually fetches offers from target. So that code you need to set that up, right? And the last step is validation. So validating that you are having the same visitor profile for client side and server side both, right? If it's a hybrid implementation, do check your SDID, supplemental data ID, if it's populating correctly. As another step, you can also inspect your server state and visitor state objects. Okay, so make sure that everything, whatever you have in your setup, if you have target, analytics, audience manager, experience cloud ID, all of these things, make sure everything is firing in the right order. All your calls are populating correctly. If you have implemented A4T, everything is prim and proper. The SDID for analytics and target is same, right? All these things you need to validate before you go live with your server side implementation. Okay, so that was about it. Hope you are able to learn server side testing and you can go ahead and implement it using this video. It's a walkthrough which I have tried that it is as simple as possible, but there are a lot of things that I may not have covered in this video, but in the interest of time, I just picked up the most important things that I felt are needed. Do not get confused with the Node.js SDK older version, because whatever I discussed was the latest version. There is some documentation online which you will find for the older version, and people get confused. I did get confused. I was using the older one, and then I realized, okay, this is the older one, this is the latest one. So do look at the right documentation from wherever you are studying this. Okay. So if you like this video, please like and please subscribe. Thank you.